What is the creepiest confession slash most disturbing that you've heard from an otherwise normal person? Unfortunately, this is about me. I told a friend and they were pretty creeped out about it, and I'm quite embarrassed of it, really. I've never done it again, and it's really changed the way I talk to people online. My Reddit account has some very easy to follow steps to find out who I am, so I only post positive things, very tame critiques, and that's about it. My account has my name that I share with a lot of other things, previous online accounts, etc. But my story is about how I cyberstalked a BF3 hacker just because he was being annoying. When BF3 became free to play, I joined a TDM server. I have quite a few hours on BF3, 300 plus, and I really enjoyed it. To see a full server again was quite fun, and I was kicking ass. Then this guy joins. This guy starts kicking ass, headshotting me from across the map. I don't think too much of it, but I ask, hey man, is that all skill? He responds, it is, and he's streaming. BF3 isn't a very popular game, so it took less than a minute to find his Twitch stream. Just look for a picture of the same map being played, and his was the first. Clearly hacking, boxes on screen, snapping headshots, the whole 9 yards. So now I had his stream. I called it out in-game, linked the stream, and he left, was booted a minute later. In that minute, he was joking about how, as the game was free, he could just get another account and keep going. On his stream, he wasn't talking, but he was typing. He was typing to another streamer. Now his stream just had me as a viewer. I was pretty bored and he had my attention. He hadn't really ruined my gaming experience. It was just, who is this douche? His Twitch name matched his Twitter name, which he used to promote his stream. His Twitter was filled with bully/trolling posts at people, and he was just a smarmy douchebag. No photos, though. His name was included, but it wasn't a very unique name. Now I have a Twitter account and a name. This is where it gets even worse. I start to trawl his posts, going back months. I find a post that links him to a town. I Google search the town and his name. Bingo. A post about Australia Day and how he thought his town had put on a really bad show, just saying how bad it was, etc., and trolling people in the comments. It was a small town and people were biting. You should organize it if you think you're so great, etc. He was eating it up. But I had his Facebook. Start looking into his profile. Posts were private, but the Facebook URL closely matched the Twitter, so I knew it was him. The profile pics were nondescript, ban pages, random crap like that. But this guy had a girlfriend. Her profile was public, and she kept tagging him in posts. It was so cringy. I love you, boo. You're my world. The most beautiful girl I know, etc. This guy and his girlfriend were two ham planets. He was the epitome of keyboard warrior. He had a fedora wearing lens flare edited profile picture. It was actually just perfect. It was just so satisfying that this guy was the stereotype personified. I could have left it there, but I had to go a step further. I created another Twitch account just to let the guy know I found him. I posted his Facebook details in the chat of Twitch. There was like max 4 people watching his stream, but you could see it pop up on his stream chat. Him pause mid-game and just not do anything for like 5 seconds. He closed the stream. Yeah, this is kind of satisfying to hear, and what do you know? Like, a keyboard warrior that trolls online is an absolute loser in real life. What a concept. Next story. I used to help out at a nursing home. This old Russian lady would relate the same tale over and over. Her husband drank and hit her. It was sad for sure, but one day she leaned over and whispered, he was a-hole drunk, so I pushed him downstairs. Dead. Next story. I had a friend confess that every time he stayed at my apartment, which was frequently because we lived in different countries, sometimes he would stay for a month plus at a time, he watched me sleep. I woke with him staring at me. He was literally inches away from my face just staring, and I freaked out. He broke down and confessed. My husband was asleep next to me. That was the most creepy for sure. It also ended our friendship. Next story. A friend had told me for years about the dark secret in his past that he can't tell anybody. Eventually, he felt comfortable enough to confess, and he really was not exaggerating. When he was young, he essayed his younger sister. The family knew about it, and they all got counseling and stuff at the time. He and his sister are friends now, but F. Next story. A colleague confessed that he had sex with her brother throughout her childhood and early adolescence. She told me she despises her brother's wife because she's in love with her brother and is insanely jealous of his life and kids. She has never had a relationship and fears she will never be married or have kids of her own. Yeah, if incest is the first thing on your mind, you're probably doomed to die alone. Sorry. Next story. Most disturbing was when a friend confided in me that she'd been SA'd. It was quite disturbing because I used to think of sexual violence as an abstract concept that wasn't pervasive enough to affect my world. But it is. Disabused me of many inaccurate notions. Next story. I work with a Polish dude who barely speaks English. He's a lovable 40-something dude who just drinks vodka and laughs infectiously all day long. A textbook carefree scamp. Every couple of months, everyone from work heads to a bar that hooks us up with half-price drinks for that particular night. It's pretty sweet. So anyway, this Polish dude and I were at the end of a long 10-person bench, laughing about nothing and drinking ice-cold cruiser after ice-cold cruiser. It was great. Eventually we somehow got onto the topic of what he did before he came to England. After a few brews, his English became even more scattered, but he did try. Bless him. So he says he was in the army and so on and so forth, after which he said, "I shoot 10 men dead." Now, that might not seem too heavy for you, but it blew me away. He was on the front lines during the Kosovan War, from what I could gather. I couldn't, and didn't want to, get too much more out of him due to the language barrier. Also, some gnarly, illegal crap happened during that war, which I don't think I could bear to know about. Keep smiling, Pete. Next story. That my great-uncle likes kids. It suddenly made a whole lot more sense that none of his adult daughters were ever married or had a serious LTR and are overweight with self-esteem issues. Every other aspect of his life is perfectly normal, and I would have never expected that from him. There was a court case before I was born that was dismissed. My mother never even let me meet him until early this year, because she didn't want to take the chance that he might act indecently towards me. Next story. I have a couple posts. One friend stabbed someone and the person did not survive. He wasn't charged because he claimed self-defense, but he's all effed up about it because he thought the person was armed and they weren't. When I was 13, my 16-year-old friend told me she used to crap herself until she was 13 in an effort to keep her dad from SAing her. She threatened to call the cops, and her dad committed self-unaliving with a shotgun in their living room. My ex told me that he fantasized about his 7-year-old neighbor. That was 10 years ago. He's effed up, and I know it. The same ex told me his uncle used to fall asleep with his genitals in his mouth when he was a kid. I've had a pretty colorful life, but I don't want to air my personal dirty laundry. I'll update if I think of anything else. Edit. I got one more for you. My friend has long dreads and had a pretty bad case of lice. When he came back from traveling, his roommates wouldn't let him in the house until he was lice-free. Being poor, he couldn't afford treatment, so he dunked his head in some sort of gasoline. Then he lit a cigarette. He has no nipples. Most of his body is skin grafted. He still has dreads. He is lice-free. Oh, what the heck, I'll keep going. My friend passed away a year ago. His F-buddy at the time wanted to inject heroin into his veins for him. She overshot it. I honestly thought he was clean, so I was a bit surprised. I was at a friend's farmhouse and watched them stomp a baby opossum to death. I was told they also hacked a raccoon with a machete. This is the same person that was excited about their new taser and kept looking for small critters, mostly toads, to tase. He would then throw their paralyzed bodies in the fish pond to drown. Edit. More. A friend of mine is a production of SA. He has serious identity issues as his mother is Native American and his father is white. He absolutely despises white people. My best friend that passed away confided in me that his girlfriend from back in his home state, we met in college, was pregnant and giving the baby up for adoption. She also had leukemia. But beat it. I know during the pregnancy she needed a blood transfusion. He told me he didn't really care about her anymore. He was struck by a car and she had just given their baby up for adoption. They started a lengthy court battle to get back custody, and I never kept in touch with her enough to find out the outcome. Another good friend confided in me that his girlfriend was repeatedly SA'd by her brother. She would always get uncomfortably perverted in public, so I was really surprised to hear that. Oh, and a friend of mine told me her parents wiped her ass for her until she was 12, and they melted her ice cream before she could eat it because they were afraid it was too cold. She also told them that her car broke down and she needed $10K to buy another. It was fine. She lied and used the $10K to pay for her girlfriend, at the time, sex change operation in Thailand. Well, OP, here I am convinced that you live in bizarro world. Like, one of these interactions is enough of a double take, but like for you to have 5, 6, 7 stories about just like these insanely weird things from people that you know and friends and colleagues, you need to get out of that town. Next story. On my way home from counseling, an elderly lady talked to me about her experience as a nurse in a mental institution. Some of the things she said were horrifying and sad. I think she was glad to get it off her chest. This included patients with schizophrenia who were abandoned by families, people admitted into the wards because of their homosexuality, with some very upsetting consequences, and more. Most involved patients taking their own lives. I sat there and listened, though I'm not sure how much of it actually sunk in until I got home. Next story. I had an art teacher in about 3rd grade who was really cool, or at least I thought so. At some point, she came up to me and said, "I love your red hair. I just want to chop it all off when you're asleep and glue it to my head." It's one of my sharpest childhood memories because I remember going afterward, thanks? And laughing really nervously. Next story. A friend of mine confessed that he was SA'd as a child. His parents are part of a cult that believes their leader can talk to God. The cult is decent sized. There are about a few hundred members when I researched it. My friend said that there was a man from the church who would offer to babysit him and his little brother. The babysitter would offer them money to take off their clothes, get their pictures taken, and do sexual favors. The church gathers a block from my house. I thought this building was a temple or a mosque, but in reality it's some sort of cult compound. Some of the members are actually part of the local police, too. If I wasn't always drunk, I would probably be scared. Next story. I need a throwaway for this because it's really stupid. Before reading, realize I was a stupid teen. In 2009, one of my closest friends made a confession I found disturbing back then. He told me that he was gay, and my reaction was completely wrong. What I did was kicking him in the face and telling him he should cure from his disease, or I would never want to see you again, and never did. Sadly, 2 months after this happened, he self-unalived. I'm not even 100% sure this was because of me, but no one else knew he was gay. I didn't even attend his funeral because then I had no idea it would be because of me. I realized it later, and I still mourn him. I'm so sorry for this, but I never told this to one of his friends or family. I'm donating the Human Rights Campaign and Unalive Prevention Foundations today, and I think this is the best I can do. Something like this is something I wish never happens again. Next story. Told me that he used to go on forums and boards dedicated to people struggling with depression, and he PM'd the ones who were feeling wanting to self-unalive with instructions on how to go about unaliving themselves, and give them encouragement to do so. I've never lost so much respect for a person within a duration of a couple of minutes. Next story. My ex-boyfriend could not handle our breakup. I broke it off with him because of significant issues, drugs, stealing, etc. I finally got out of it. He didn't. He would not give up on me. At first, he was desperate at trying to get back with me, following me, waiting in obscure locations for when I walked to my car, and even threatening to unalive himself if I didn't see him. I blocked his numbers, changed my email, transferred colleges, moved a state away, and tried to move on with my life. He was in and out of jail for drugs and stealing in addition to concealed weapons charges, which was scary for me knowing all the times when he confronted me alone. It was about 4 years or so later when I received the creepiest phone call. It was him calling to tell me he was looking for me all this time. The tone of his voice, the horrific laughter. I freaked out. I called my parents and informed them, "Hey, if I go missing, this is who has me." I called the campus security and made sure they had his description. He never showed up, but my God, the voice on the other end of the line still brings chills. It scares me to this day that he's out there possibly looking for me. Luckily, I've become more aware of precautions to take. Pepper spray, learning self-defense, etc. If I was in another state where obtaining a gun was easier, I would have done so. Unfortunately, it's not so easy where I am now. I do, however, have panic buttons and GPS locators, so if something were to happen, I can be found. I try not to let fear or paranoia run my life. I try to take the best precautions, but I'll always have that fear that just around the corner, he will be waiting for me. Next story. My friend said he was left alone with the body of his dead cousin during the funeral. Everyone got personal time to say goodbye or whatever, and he had sex with it. He cried when he told us. I have no other information. An 18-year-old I had just met got crazy drunk, on the verge of alcohol poisoning, and said he was worried about a child adult content case he was caught up in. I didn't want to know anymore and made sure he didn't die, then got the F out. Next story. In high school, we were hanging out with this kid who was a grade lower than us, and he started talking about how he buried his cat up to its head and then ran it over with a lawnmower. I didn't believe that he actually did that. The cat would probably tear the crap out of you, but it was disturbing to think that this was the information he decided to share to impress us. Next story. Had an absolutely charming, incredibly smart-looking close friend for a few years. It took me about 1.5 to 2 years to find out everything about her life was a lie. Even the smarts, she'd read some detailed article on a subject and present ideas as if they were her own, but never knew anything deeper. Pretended to speak many languages by secretly watching a foreign movie with subs on, then translating some cool scenes to us. She made up a story about her father abusing her mom to make excuses for failing her uni exams, lied to people about being a medical student to look smart, and would give them very dangerous advice, lied to her family about being a brilliant medical student, don't know if they believed her, and about many, many other things. She was an incredibly fun person, but an awful toxic friend. Still, I was afraid she'd lose her mind completely if I revealed her secrets to anyone, so I only quietly told the people she was abusing or potentially putting in danger, so she couldn't do any damage anymore. Several times I tried to talk her into going into therapy, but I stopped. She was in complete denial about me knowing everything. I was so afraid she'd unalive herself if she found out what everyone thought of her. One day, she just packed her things, said goodbye with a hug and a huge smile on her face, and left for another country to, quote, pursue her medical studies. I've kept evidence of all the craziness in case it comes back someday. I'd say that if you genuinely pay attention to people around you, you'll find out many creepy stories like this. Some people see friends come and go, and actually never have any idea of what's going on in their lives. Next story. Took a humanities course where the teacher had put a big emphasis on using it as a therapy session. People would share stories about a relative getting cancer or the death of somebody, etc. I was talking with a female friend/acquaintance, A, whom I knew from that class, and the subject turned to a meeting a few days prior where a few stories about SA and SA were shared. She told me that she considered reporting her father for SA when she was a teen, and her parents were going through a divorce. A confided that her father never actually laid a finger on her, and A's mother was actually riding roughshod over him because the family business was registered in her name for tax reasons, but the divorce was dragging on. A was firmly on her mother's side and thought that reporting him would put a quick end to the proceedings. As a male, that terrified me, and in the context of the legitimate victims that shared their stories a few days prior, disgusted me. I stopped meeting her outside of that specific class. Next story. I started seeing a girl about a month ago. She recently told me she was SA'd when she was 5. Her parents were druggies and had her at a young age, so she stayed with her grandma. But my girl's grandma was drunk, so she would have her son, my girl's uncle, take care of her. He was about 25 when this happened, as the story goes. He went to score whatever drugs he was on at the time and left his 5-year-old niece unattended in the car for who knows how long. When he returned, he found her covered in blood. She had reconstructive surgery on her privates from where the guy tore her open. She confided all of this in me before I went down on her because she has confidence issues because one side looks stretched. It doesn't bother me one bit. She says she still remembers his face and tries not to think about it. The most effed up thing is when the uncle brought her home, they did nothing. Because he was buying drugs at his dealer's house when it happened, they did nothing. To save the F-head uncle that brought the 5-year-old around a bunch of junkies, who knows what actually happened? He could have allowed it to happen for drugs. About 6 months after this happened, he unalived himself. OD. My girl says she doesn't like talking about it, so I don't ever bring it up, but I know it has definitely affected her mentally. I just wish there was something I could do to help her forget. Next story. When I was 14, at a sleepover with my best friend, she told me that she used to live next door to a predator. He touched up and essayed 2 out of 3 of his kids, 1 boy and 1 girl, who then told the police who didn't believe them, especially because the mum told them they were making it up for attention. He then went to do charity work in Africa and may have assaulted them. We don't know. Then he came back to England and then assaulted one of his grandkids. This little girl told her mum, who was assaulted by him too. The little girl, her mum, and her brother, the 3 victims of this man, 2 of them now adults, then went to police. This time the police realized their past mistake and arrested the man, but he died before he could be prosecuted. I knew this previously, but she told me, you know you have those random snippets of childhood memories and you don't know whether they're real, imagination, or dream. I nodded. Well, I have one of these about going up and down the road on my scooter when I was about 5, and him sitting in his garage. He called me into the garage and shut the door. Then, about an hour later, I left. That's all I remember, but a couple of years ago, I was trying to put my tampon in, and there wasn't that skin stuff that's supposed to be there. You know, that barrier. And I've never cycled, rode a horse, or done gymnastics. She looked really distressed when she said this. Next story. My friend, who's this grade A student, goes over to all these different girls' houses, not to have sex or anything, just to steal their dirty underwear while they're in the bathroom or they're elsewhere. He has a full box, which includes a pair of my sister's underwear, which he admitted to stealing, in his pantry. I'm surprised no one has noticed in his house, but to this day, I'm the only one who knows. Well, now the whole of Reddit knows. Ha! F you, Scott, you panty-stealing F. Next story. This one is relevant. It's about my dad, actually. This man is a career soldier, is still in and has many more years before he gets out. 23 years in so far. Well, he isn't the most normal person anymore. After he came home from Iraq the second time, he had changed majorly. He was put on a lot of PTSD medications that keep him pretty normal most of the time. However, on his 48th birthday, we decided to celebrate with some friends and have a few drinks. We didn't know that he didn't take his medicine that day, and we got him a little too much to drink on whiskey. One of his non-military buddies said, "Hey man, how many of those bastards did you actually get?" We all stop and just stare, not really wanting an answer and hoping he was sober enough to not provide one. He wasn't. He answered with, "You know what? I don't give a F about the a-holes I killed. They tried to kill me and my buddies. They deserved it. The only ones I do regret are the women and children that got in the way. They didn't deserve to die." We stopped giving him drinks after that and haven't spoken about it since, but it was a shock to say the least. Next story. That would definitely be when my father drove 2,000 miles to my home to sit down and, for the first time, be brazenly open about how he was SA'd by his cousin when he was 5 or so, 12, and how he's been a predator since. But it's okay, because he was SA'd as a child and hey, turned out okay. This comes out of the woodwork as he was preparing for trial because he volunteered his computer to the police and it had a kiddie adult content on it. His trial is in March. Next story. There is this chef I worked with who seemed like a pretty normal dude. He was an immigrant from Haiti. One day he brings up that he had to put his sick dog down when he was a kid. And he did it himself since Haitians didn't have extensive access to medical care for people, much less animals. He said he tied a rock to its neck and dropped it in the ocean. That made it really hard to talk to him. Yeah, I don't see this as putting a dog down. I feel like there are more humane ways to do that, but I don't know. It sounds like he thinks he's justified in that. We just agree to disagree. Next story. This will get buried, but I'll answer. I worked on a psych ward for a year in a military hospital. A young man was arrested while doing push-ups on the White House lawn. He said he had a meeting with the president and he was just killing time. He's lucky he didn't get killed. Anyway, he was on our ward for quite some time, and at that time, he and I got extremely close. When I was on shift, he would request to talk to me, confide in me, etc. This was fine with me. It was my job. This guy said a lot of weird stuff. He was extremely sick. He began making religious drawings every day, at least 7 to 10 a day. Then he started to claim he was a prophet. Then he claimed he was Jesus. He even asked us to call him Jesus or Christ. For some reason, after all the other weird crap he'd done, that stuck with me the most. After weeks of medication, he hadn't gotten any better. He was getting worse. Eventually, he got released, and last I heard, he had a manager and was getting a record deal for being a rapper. He also bought 3 brand new cars and was rumored to be homeless. I think about him often and hope he's doing okay. Next story. I have a completely normal friend, we're both in our early 40s now, that shared with me his childhood story of living with a ghost. Every night he had a ghost that would walk down the hallway into his bedroom and just stare at him, sometimes making noises, but usually quiet. He was so petrified that he would pull the sheets over his head. When this first happened, he would scream or run down the hallway to his parents' bedroom, but they would always turn him back to his own bedroom and tell him that his imagination was running wild. Over time, he actually grew accustomed to this apparition, but was still freaked out by it. I personally don't believe in ghosts and think that it must have been something else, but because my friend has such a type A and a no bullcrap personality, I admit that I found it creepy. The hair stood up on the back of my neck. To listen to him tell this story with such a nonchalance and straightforwardness. He eventually moved out of his childhood home when he was a teenager, and these ghost episodes have never reoccurred. There are different people living in his childhood home now, and he said that he would never go back there again. Next story. A girl I'm no longer friends with, we'll call her Stink-Eye, told me why her parents didn't allow her to have pets. When she was 4 or 5, they had a cat. One morning, little Stink-Eye woke up to the sounds of her cat meowing and moaning loudly from a closet. She opened the closet to see the cat giving birth to kittens. Stink-Eye says that she thought they were aliens attacking her cat or something, and that's why she did what she did next. She put on shoes and stomped all of the kittens to death. She later said she had made it all up as an embarrassing story from childhood. I don't know what to believe. Well, let's certainly hope that this was made up. I mean, it's not funny either way, but my goodness, if this is true, holy moly. Next story. When I was in my mid-20s, a serious girlfriend of mine drunkenly confessed that she was willingly gangbanged by 2 of her brothers and their friends when she was in her early teens, and that it wasn't a big deal. Suddenly, a lot of her past behavior in our relationship started to make sense, and I broke up with her shortly after because I started worrying that she might actually be dangerous, as in kill your spouse for the insurance money dangerous. It's weird how people have a hard time recognizing someone's serious mental health issues when that person is very physically attractive. Next story. Out of nowhere, my ma tells me my dad drunkenly confessed that he and his cousin, whom my mom later dated and had a kid with, picked up a hitchhiker out near the beach in the early 90s. They were intoxicated and one thing led to another, and they ended up killing the guy and burying him in a remote location in some sand dunes. She assumed he was trying to scare her into staying with him since they were going through a breakup, and she shrugged it off as machismo bullcrap. So the story goes, years later, a story comes up on the news. They're asking for information about remains found buried in a sand dune. She's not really paying attention until they start describing this large belt buckle that may help identify the man. She flips the F out because my dad had bragged about taking the guy's belt off, which had a huge Texas-style buckle, and beating him with it, making fun of the buckle and stuff. Next day, the cousin calls and tells her he or his buddies would not hesitate to kill us if she breathes a word. Anyways, she always felt really guilty about not turning them in, but after losing my sister, she died very young, she couldn't fathom losing me as well. The rest is history. They're free dudes. Next story. Was good friends with this nerdy, slightly overweight guy in high school. He was pretty hilarious at times, but vindictive and mean-spirited when he was hurt. So, pretty normal teenage nerd guy, right? We would look at messed up crap online all the time and talk about crazy stuff, and I guess this made him comfortable opening up about his neighbor. He and his neighbor were friends since childhood. He brought me over to introduce me. Guy immediately comes off as a creep. He has his dog kenneled in his room and a drawer full of weird dildos that he proudly showed off to me. I never went back. My friend later tells me that the two sucked each other off and had butt sex on the reg. I'm like, okay, that's weird, but they're experimenting, so whatever. Well, it didn't end there. The neighbor got him to watch the neighbor effing his dog, telling him how dogs were into making love to humans, and he was in love with his dog. He also convinced him to film the neighbor effing his horse. Supposedly, my friend only ever effed the dog, but Jesus, that is still some effed up I never looked at him the same afterwards. The guy is a raging alcoholic pill abuser, last I heard. Next story. I had an ex, he wasn't an ex when he shared this, tell me about how a few years before we'd met, he and a friend would pretend to hypnotize him. He said that he played along so the guy would think he was really hypnotized because he thought it would be funny, or he didn't want to upset this guy who was his friend. Well, the guy hypnotized and tells him to pull his pants down and bend over. They're probably 13 to 14 years old, so my ex does it. He said he was afraid this friend of his would be upset he was lying to him about being hypnotized. Then the guy proceeds to have butt sex with my ex. My ex is male, to remove any confusion. Finish, tell him to pull his pants up, and does the whole, "when I snap my fingers, you'll be unhypnotized" thing. The ex went along with all of it, never said a thing about not being hypnotized, and even went back multiple times and let the dude do it repeatedly. Having that story in my head has bothered me for years. My ex called it SA, but it was so hard to accept that at 16. I mean, he went back. He let it happen. He knew it was going to happen each time he went back. How can that be SA? I even offered to him that having a homosexual experience isn't anything to be ashamed of, but he insisted it was SA. Who am I to argue? Fear and desire to be liked makes people do a lot of weird things, including walking back into a terrible situation like that over and over. I just never understood. He's doing great now, as far as I know, and I wish him the absolute best. He's a great dude. I hope he's dealt with whatever that was, if it still weighs on him. Hopefully, I'm the only one of us who still ever thinks of it, but I'm sure that's wishful thinking. Yeah, there's no way that a story like this is ever going to be fully forgotten by the victim slash accomplice. I mean, I guess it's a matter of perspective, but like you said, willingly going back and allowing it to happen, I don't know. Next story. A couple of years ago, I was hanging out with some friends I hadn't seen in a while. One of them, more friend of a friend, was a heavy drinker and wanted someone to drive him to get cigarettes because he was too drunk to drive. I offered to bring him. Along the way, he slurred, "Remember that time back at the party house we used to hang out at? We did that stuff together?" I was puzzled and said, "No," and he elaborated to say that we had done some gay things together. I'm not gay. However, if I were, he's certainly not my type. In any case, nothing like that ever happened, and I told him so, but he kept believing that we had done something gay together. He's not openly gay or anything either. It made for an awkward ride back. I later learned he said a similar thing to another friend with whom nothing like that had happened. Next story. I was talking about going to the dentist with a cleaning lady at my work. Now, I had just met the woman, so keep that in mind for the rest of the story. Anyways, her response to me telling her about my plans for a dentist trip was, "I do not like the dentist," to which I curiously asked, "Why not? Bad experience with fillings or something?" And to my horror, she let out, "Nope, I was S8 at the dentist 10 times when I was 8. So of course, I stood there with my mouth wide open, not exactly knowing how to respond to this woman, and it was quite possibly one of the most awkward encounters of my life. Next story. Not so much that I heard, but I saw. I had this lady friend. We used to hang out a lot, you know, the usual, drinks, smokes, music, etc. One night, after having gone out together, I went home with her to spend the night. Once we were there, she changed her clothes to something more comfortable, took a hypodermic needle out of a drawer, went to the bathroom sink, and proceeded to stick into her arm and just started to drain blood all over the sink. I didn't know what was going on, so I just promptly asked what the F she was doing. She calmly replied, "Nothing, I just enjoy watching my blood flow and paint the sink red." Turned out she actually did it fairly regularly. That was one of the more bizarre nights of my life, and she's one of the more influential people to have come into my life. Still, creepy as F. Next story. I was with some friends at a bonfire, and there were a bunch of seemingly cool/normal people there. We were all just hanging out, drinking, and having a good time. The story started flowing, and kinda out of nowhere, this pale/Gollum-esque dude chimes in with, "One time, some friends and I lit a playground on fire." We all kinda sat in silence, then awkwardly laughed and shrugged it off. Stories kept flowing. Then a few minutes later he said, "Yeah, back where I grew up, it was a small town. We didn't have a lot to do, so my group of friends and I would go around the neighborhood and find stray cats and stomp them to death." And he kind of chuckled as he was saying it, like he expected us to laugh with him. Everyone kind of said a collective, "That's really effed up, man." And again, there was awkwardness and silence. But it gets worse, and as I'm typing this, I can still see the flicker of the flames on his creepy face. He quite literally ended the night with his next story. "One time, we stole a car from a parking lot. It was me and one other friend, and we just noticed that the lady had left the car running while she ran into the store, so we just hopped in and drove it off. Then, right as we got out of the parking lot and onto the main road, we noticed there was a baby in the safety seat and back. My buddy panicked, and as we got onto the main highway, he just threw the baby out of the window. We never found out if it was okay or not." Everyone left without really responding to that one. Later, we discovered that he ended up doing some time for shooting an 80-year-old lady in the face with a pellet gun from his balcony, just for fun. Good dude. Next story. This guy asked me out on a date, and I happily agreed. We were meeting up for pizza, though I think he had been drinking a little bit before our date. Things were going well enough. We were being really cute and holding hands, and the overall mood of the evening was incredibly lighthearted and fun. He ordered a beer and a refill, maybe even 2 after that. After a while, he looked at me, paused, and then started telling me a story about how he had been diagnosed with schizophrenia as a child and stated he still had occasional auditory hallucinations and health-related delusions. It wasn't terribly creepy. I think it was mostly just the timing and unexpectedness of it in such a public and impersonal environment. He's a lovely person and incredibly honest, but the lingering circumstances involving his mental health, including the initial red flags toward alcoholism, which he confessed to later, really complicated his life as well as our relationship. Next story. Satanic ritual abuse. This woman was apparently used in rituals and as a sex toy by some local group of witches that her stepmother belonged to. It went from age 6 to age 18 and included all the weird chanty, candle, pentagram stuff, but also being buried alive, being put in a hole and having spiders dumped on her, sexual tortures, and intentionally splitting her personality so that she would not remember any of it. She was actually programmed to unalive herself at age 40, and the unsuccessful attempt was what started unraveling everything. The family started to piece together what was going on, and at first they did not believe it, but eventually, as more information came to light, they believed what happened. She had over 50 different personalities. Some were kids, some were teenagers, and at least one was a man. I'm not sure how that all works, but eventually she got all her personalities integrated and is now living a normal life. She's an RN, enjoys archery, and has a cat and likes watching old westerns, so I guess she's normal now. She does have some pretty major health concerns. Something they did to her compressed several discs in her back, but aside from that, she's okay. Next story. When I was 14, I used to know a guy, M, from an online horror movie forum. M used to tell me he had anger management issues, but I thought he was fine, a nice guy who was a bit of a religious freak. M also told me he was annoyed with his girlfriend because she was constantly stalking him online. We used to play MSN games together back when Windows Live Messenger was the in thing. Then, suddenly he stopped coming online. A few weeks later, a friend of M's posted something in the forums that M was in jail for some sort of trouble and told us not to worry about it. So we waited for M's return, but he never came back. Then I googled M's name, and I had the shock of my life. M was charged for murdering his girlfriend and committing necrophilia on her. I was utterly disgusted and petrified that when he gets out, he'd come after me. TLDR, guy I knew online turned out to be a psychopathic murderer. Next story. After living with my then-girlfriend, almost fiancé, for 3 years, she told me one evening that she shot and killed her previous husband in that home. She also told me that she put his body in an old shed in the backyard. I didn't believe her. A few months later, she tried to kill me by shooting me, ambush style, in the same living room. I got shot, but recovered physically. Investigators later discovered her original story was true. Her ex had been in the shed for years. Further learned she was married 4 or 5 times before, and no one had found them either. Next story. Me and 2 friends, S and O, went on a school trip a while back that lasted like a week, so we had a room together. Anyway, we were all sitting next to each other, telling jokes to each other and stuff, when suddenly O straight up punches S in the face for seemingly no reason. O storms back to the room, while S is lying on the floor, stunned. Tensions had been rising for a while now, because when you spend too much time with your friends, you start to hate them. Anyway, I go back to our room, where I find O lying on his bed, crying. O was one of the toughest guys I knew, and I'd never seen him cry before. I ask him what's wrong, and he tells me that S said something about his sister, around 6 years old. Then he tells me he had a nightmare about her a while back, but it was too real to be a dream. After inquiring about it more, all I got from him on the subject was, it destroyed me. Seriously, that sent chills down my spine, but he never really mentioned it again.